they could make the game pay to win. Straight up put a sword in a cash shop with full stats that one-shots every boss in the game, and people will still play. They can make the game free to play and then put some pay to... They could turn the game into Black Desert Online and people will still play. I literally think that there's nothing that they could do. I don't think that they can do that. There's nothing that Blizzard can do to kill themselves. All right, let's watch this video.
Has Final Fantasy XIV killed World of Warcraft? Has the Western king of MMOs been dethroned by the Eastern Prince? Has the clickbait title got this video more views than normal? Let's find out.
It probably
Ladies and
has.
gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Strife Hayes. Over the last few years, the MMORPG landscape has been dominated by 5 major MMO games: World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, The Elder Scrolls Online, and RuneScape. And of these 5, World of Warcraft has stood
Are you just going to throw RuneScape in there?
head and shoulders above all the others in terms of players. It's been an absolute dominant force in the MMORPG landscape. And because of this, every time a new MMORPG is announced or released, people always ask, is this the WoW killer? Will this dethrone the king? But it turns out World of Warcraft's biggest enemy wasn't another game. It was World of Warcraft itself.
Shocker!
Turns out all the other MMOs had to actually do was sit around and survive long enough and wait as World of Warcraft messed up its own game and butchered its own player base, and then be there to comfort all of the World of Warcraft refugees that would eventually flock to them. Turns out all the other MMOs had to do was wait until people got sick of WoW and then welcome the refugee players.
I disagree with that. You don't simply wait. You don't simply wait. Because that's the mistake a lot of MMOs made in the past, is that they just assumed that players would just leave. Yeah, I don't agree with that because you're assuming WoW players are stupid. I mean, they're going to look for something better. If they don't find anything better, they're going to go back to World of Warcraft, no matter how bad it is. I think that's a really shallow take on it because the other MMOs just didn't have to wait. They got to actually make a good game. And the titles he named were decent, save Guild Wars 2 in terms of keeping up with current content, because I think Guild Wars 2 is kind of suffering from the, being on the shelf too long with mothballs. I think Final Fantasy and ESO are probably leading the pack in that list he gave.
And it turns out that the game to do that might be Final Fantasy XIV. Let's discuss why. Before we begin, consider dropping a like on the video or subbing to the channel for more MMO stuff. Ring the bell so you get all the future videos, and a big shout out to the Patreon supporters. It is getting close.
I really
to
need to do that for my channel.
Reduction. More on this at the end. For now, let's begin.
I did it, but I haven't updated it.
That World of Warcraft can be killed, and if that were possible, how would it happen? Because it's a rather strange phenomenon. Right now, there are multiple MMOs all surviving. The big five.
Let me just before he even continues to talk. It would take probably 10 years for WoW's player base to get to the point to where it would be killed. Like, it's just the physical amount of time it would take for the player base to leave WoW over a period of time would probably like 10 years.
5 and many smaller ones.
And by that time, we're going to have different MMOs out.
And even if an MMO isn't number 1, it can still have a player base and make money. So it's not a case of there can be only one. MMORPG games aren't Highlanders. However, MMOs are games that people invest years of their life into. They're often so big they take hundreds or thousands of hours to fully explore, and so people want to pick the right one. This means not just finding a game they enjoy, or a game their friends play. It also means, and this is extremely important to a lot of players, finding a game that will definitely survive. No one wants to play a dying or dead MMO, because then your years of investment in your character might be taken away if the game does shut down.
Listen, that's some brainwashing that has kept people out of other MMOs for a long time. Because what happens when somebody goes to a new MMO? What will they ask? What is endgame like? They're already thinking 6 months from now. So people are already thinking about their investment, the journey, or the time it takes to get the max level, doing the content, doing the raids. What is endgame like? That's the first question they ask. What is endgame like? They don't care about getting the endgame. And I wonder what MMO kind of ingrained that into people's heads. That the whole MMO experience is about endgame. Could it be the most popular MMO on the planet right now?
MMOs into a really dangerous position. If people think your game is dying, people won't play it, and if people don't play, the game dies.
People, when I was playing when I was playing Crowfall, people were like, "Oh, this game's gonna be dead in a month." They're already thinking a month ahead. They're not even caring about what's in the game. They're thinking about a month, 2 months, 3 months from now. Just like when WildStar was out, people were like, "This game's not gonna be around," and then everybody's sounding the death knell of what's going to happen a year from now. Same with Ashes of Creation. People like, are people going to be around after a year? Are people going to be around after 2 years? They're already thinking about the end game. Not the game itself, the end game. That is why the MMO genre is where it is right now. Because people are so hung up on end game, they don't care about the other stuff.
It's a cycle, a horrible death spiral that's hard as hell to recover from, if possible at all. If you run an MMO, the last thing you want is the public to think your game is dying, because that could cascade very quickly into a massive player exodus. So multiple MMORPGs can coexist together. In fact, some would consider this essential for the genre to continue because competition breeds excellence. World of Warcraft is in no danger from other games simply existing, but if people think your game is...
Why did he say that before? Why did he actually say the counterpoint before? He said that all they had to do was wait. Or was that a hypothetical? English is my first language, although it doesn't sound like it.
Dying, this can potentially start an almost unstoppable cycle. New players will Google your game and see people saying it's dying and so not join the game. And because new people aren't joining the game, your game ends up dying. It becomes this absolute domino effect of as soon as the public think it's not worth getting invested in, the public don't invest in it. And then the current player base realise there's no new blood coming into the game begins to stagnate and slowly die off.
Now, I agree with that point to a certain degree, but you forget the power of nostalgia. Like, for real, you forget how strong nostalgia is. People will tolerate so much crap that they would not tolerate in any other game for a game they have fond memories of doing in the past. Fond memories of playing in the past. When people think about World of Warcraft, they think about all those great memories they had when they first played an MMO, and that has a grip on them. They could basically delete all the main characters in the game and those players will stick around. So what he's talking about is kind of like a paraphrase, what I like to call managed decline, where the game is slowly dying off. The company does its best to keep the current player base there, but it's not making much effort to retain or even get new players. They're just trying to monetize as much as they can at the current player base while the player count declines. But there's already many millions of WoW players that are not going to leave until they shut the servers down. I'm telling you, they will say I quit as soon as a patch or an expansion comes out. Oh, guess what? I'm installing World of Warcraft. Haha, re-rating. They're going right back. Because that's the power of nostalgia. They are clinging on to those memories that they had, those positive memories. And that's why WoW ain't going nowhere for a long time. Because these young kids that started WoW are now adults with fat paychecks and they ain't going nowhere. So the whole notion of WoW dying in itself is just futile. Unless all those players die. Unless we just get a planet-wide memory wipe and all of those nostalgia things are just gone. It ain't going nowhere because those people aren't going to leave no matter what. Like, if any other game is doing what World of Warcraft is doing right now, they would be in big trouble. But it's not going to happen. I'm trying to tell people that it's not going to happen because they've made up their mind. They're going to play the game no matter how bad it is. They might tell you they're going to quit, but they're going back. They're going back. They're not going to leave the game.
MMORPGs need to hit a critical mass of players on release to be enjoyable for the first few weeks and then maintain this critical mass of players every expansion, every year as they go on to remain enjoyable for both the people who are playing them now and the new people they want to come and join them. And while World of Warcraft may still be one of the strongest, most played games of all time, dropping from the number 1 spot to the number 2 spot, that's a pretty big signal.
That hurt my brain a little bit.
Pretty big indicator that the king is not untouchable. that World of Warcraft, that has enjoyed genre dominance for so long, might be floundering. And while it's not an
Well, I disagree. Okay. Now that I've got a grip of what he was saying, I think it's not necessarily a tale of WoW failing. I think it's a tale of Final Fantasy growing. That is the thing here. That is the topic. It's not WoW's failing. It's Square Enix's decision to give you the best trial ever conceived by an MMO, where you can go through 2 full packs. You can go through a Realm Reborn. You can go through Heavensward up to level 60 with no restrictions other than some social stuff. And the developer is constantly updating the game, and a very vibrant player base that evangelizes the game all the time.
dead or a dying game. Dropping from 1 to 2? That could start the first domino falling. So surely
We have no proof that they dropped from 1 to 2. What we have is a site that estimates the player base. We don't have any hard numbers that they dropped from 1 to 2. We do know that Final Fantasy XIV has confirmed a large amount of players. We do know that. This is why I'm taking the tact of not necessarily WoW declining. It's more about Final Fantasy XIV growing. You can that's tangible. You can quantify that. You can't quantify WoW dying. You can quantify Final Fantasy XIV growing. And from Blizzard's perspective, they recognize that, which is why they sent out that survey basically saying, are you going to play Endwalker? Because that is their number one competition. I mean, that's what you do. You have to analyze if your players are going to play the competition, and you need to account for that.
to beat World of Warcraft, all you need to do is release an objectively better game. Well, no, not really, because you're not just trying to get people to play a game. You're trying to remove people from an established culture and move them over to yours. I've already discussed why you can't kill World of Warcraft on my other videos.
Why am I watching this, though? He has a video called Why You Cannot Kill World of Warcraft. I'm watching a video called Has Final Fantasy XIV Killed World of Warcraft? I feel debated.
MMO game isn't just a video game. It's a community, millions strong. It's a subculture, a friendship group, a clan, a guild, a personal connection to your character and the adventures they've been on. When you invest years of your life into anything, you form an emotional connection with that thing.
I agree.
Breaking that connection can be extremely difficult.
Sound familiar? I got on my soapbox and was talking about this earlier.
It's the same as anything. A favourite TV show, a favourite band, a favourite person. Even if something objectively better comes along, you might not like that thing more. Even if
Okay, I'm liking this guy now.
they change over the years for the worse, the emotional connection will stay. Very few people can completely emotionally disconnect and drop years of bonding.
Can we talk about this ad that's on the screen, that's on there 7 times? Like, dude, can we just talk about that?
For something else. If a new MMORPG released today that was superior to every single MMO on the market in every conceivable way, it still wouldn't get all of the players, because people would stick to what they know and what they've come to love. We are emotional creatures. We get attached to things, even if we shouldn't. So a new game has to be not only great in terms of mechanics and graphics and player involvement, it needs to be so unimaginably great it actually destroys years of emotional build-up and commitment to other games and brings an established community over to it, which is just extremely unlikely to happen.
The only thing that could cause this to happen is if they close down the servers. If Blizzard gets hit with some kind of wacky class action or some kind of something that makes them have to turn off the servers, that's the only way it's going to happen.
Similarities between playing an MMO you hate just...
And I mean, we joke that people say that WoW, the only person that can kill WoW is WoW. And I don't agree. I don't think they can't even commit seppuku, chat. I don't think WoW could kill itself. It's going to stab himself in the kneecap instead of the heart. It's like they can't even kill, like if you look at the stuff that Blizzard has done over the last 5 years, if it were anybody else, not 5 years, maybe like last 3 years, if it were anybody else in the MMO space, they would get a lot more ridicule than Blizzard does. But you know what? Blizzard gets they get the benefit of the doubt because they have earned trust with players, and people expect them to either address the issue, fix the issue, or make it better in the future, right? But if anybody else did that, they would be considered a bad developer and everybody would leave. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Blizzard gets a pass because in the past, the people who built the company earned it. A good point now is that those people are now gone.
Because you've played it for so long, and staying in a job you hate, or being friends or in a relationship with a person you hate, just because it's familiar and you've got history. It's comfortable in an awful way. It's a habit. In some cases, it becomes an addiction. So killing World of Warcraft isn't just a case of making a better game. It's a case of overcoming years of entrenched emotional bonds and personal connections. It's trying to get people to quit an addiction, because to many people that's exactly what World of Warcraft is, and this doesn't actually happen very often. Even in cases when people do leave their favourite MMORPG and go and play a new MMO that's just released, they often return to their old favourite within a few days, weeks, or sometimes months.
Sound familiar, chat? You know you've done it. I did it back in the day when I was playing Final Fantasy XI. I was trying Shadowbane, Matrix Online, you name every MMO that came out during those years, World of Warcraft, and you know what happened? I played them for a few days and I went running back to Final Fantasy XI every single time.
Because the game they know, the game they're good at, is comfortable. And people like being comfortable. When you spend
Online?
years building up an understanding or a connection, you feel safe and secure in any position, be that a job, a relationship, or an MMO. And these year-long comforts can feel nice. Unfortunately, when people try a new MMO, they often expect to feel the same level of comfort and security within only a few days or a few weeks that previously took them years to build up in their other game.
I definitely agree with that. These people are usually impatient. And it's human nature. It's not really their fault. They're yearning to get to that point that they were in the other game. And that's why people don't like the 3.5 second cooldown. That's why people don't like the way the zones feel in terms of like moving around. That's why people, all these comparisons between Final Fantasy XIV and WoW, they want that max level WoW experience now in a game they just started. Where if you go back and play, classic WoW, you're going to have sort of a similar experience just starting out. So people are generally impatient, and all gamers are guilty of that, not just WoW players.
People often want the feeling of complete familiarity while also being something completely new. They want to feel they've been there for years while also being amazed with a new experience.
And they come to these contradictions like, oh man, we need to innovate in the MMO space. Let's do something different. While at the same time, why can't this game do this like WoW? Or why can't this game do this like Final Fantasy? We want similarities. We want that familiarism, but at the same time, we're asking for something new and innovative. Like Guild Wars 2 was a prime example of that. Remember when Guild Wars 2 abolished the Trinity? They said, we're not going to have tank, we're not going to have healer, we're not going to have DPS, we're going to try something new. People are like, oh, innovation in the MMO space. This is great. And by the second week, people were craving the Trinity. And they left. A lot of people left Guild Wars like after the second week because they didn't have their Trinity.
They want novelty and familiarity combined. Imagine leaving a several-year-long relationship with someone you've grown to understand extremely well. When you start dating somebody else, you won't have that same deep level of understanding. You will need to work on it. And sometimes people don't want to work on it. They miss the old level of familiarity. They miss all the effort they've previously put in and don't want to put it in again, so they just go back to what they knew, even if it's not good for them or what they actually want. So if World of Warcraft is more than just a game, surely making another game isn't going to kill it, and that's absolutely right. World of Warcraft is a community, a personality. It is a hobby, a habit, in some cases an addiction. It is a personal love, a history, a memory. It's part of who you are, and a new game existing or being made isn't going to delete all of that. No other game is going to be responsible for destroying Warcraft's community. No other game is going to be responsible for tainting your memories of it. No other game is
if you get the lawyers involved, it's
going to make World of Warcraft worse. Only World of Warcraft can do that to itself.
No, it can't.
And that
How? Okay. How are they going to do it? Let's talk about that, because nobody is talking about that. What would WoW have to do to kill itself? Can anybody say anything that WoW can do to kill itself? Because they've made a lot of mistakes. Let's be frank. They have made a ton of mistakes over the last few years, and it ain't doing nothing. Sure, they may lose a couple million, but those people come back. I'm telling you, they're gonna come back no matter what. I don't know how WoW can kill itself other than flipping the servers off. People are like, that's why it's weird that a lot of folks are are saying that Blizzard needs to be careful or their game is going to die, or Blizzard needs to be careful or they're going to kill themselves. It's like, I haven't seen any evidence yet. And I think this hit me today. I haven't seen any evidence yet that Blizzard can kill itself. They could make the game pay to win. Straight up put a sword in a cash shop with full stats that one-shots every boss in the game, and people will still play. They can make the game free to play and then put some pay to... They could turn the game into Black Desert Online and people will still play. I literally think that there's nothing that they could do. I don't think that they can do that. There's nothing that Blizzard can do to kill themselves. And they know that, which is the problem. That's why they're not bothering to do stuff that you guys are begging for. That's why they're like, this is our way or the highway. That's why they're like, we know what we're doing. Shut up. You're going to play anyway, because they know you ain't going nowhere. It's like a bad relationship. It's like the person who is abusing know you ain't going to go anywhere. You ain't going to do nothing. So they just keep abusing you because you're not going to tell anybody or do anything. You're not going to go anywhere. This sounds harsh, but I'm telling you, man, there is nothing Blizzard can do that are going to make these players leave the game. I'm talking about that hardcore. It's a large number too. That hardcore WoW player fan base, they cannot leave. It's like quitting heroin cold turkey. It ain't going to happen.
Are seeing starting to happen. If you have a toxic friend or you're in a bad relationship, no matter how many better people you meet or how many people tell you it's a bad relationship, it often isn't someone else who changes your mind about that toxic person. It's the person themselves finally doing something you can't take, or finally annoying you for so long you just run out of patience. If you have a job you hate, you don't often leave because another slightly better job is hiring. You leave because your current job does something bad enough to push you away. The comfort
I don't agree with that.
at your current terrible job needs to be overcome to such an extreme degree, you finally leave.
Man, the job situation must be terrible because I've never thought that.
Humans stick around in situations long after we should have left because we have misplaced senses of loyalty, commitment, or toxic familiarity. And the catalyst that makes us finally move on often comes from the awful situation itself reaching new, unbearable levels of awfulness. World of Warcraft has franchise recognition, it has money, it has a long-term addicted player base, it has everything it needs to succeed, and it doesn't have to worry about other games killing it. It does have to worry, however, about it slowly killing itself.
Let's be real. The WoW player base could cut in half tomorrow, and it'd still be fine. It'd be nowhere near dead. Half the players could leave. Half of them. 50% players stop playing. And it will still be fine for another 30 years.
The most successful update World of Warcraft has released in the last 5 years was World of Warcraft Classic. This means the best received update was the removal of 17 years of updates.
Hence my point. People ain't going nowhere. This is okay. I hate making drug dealer parallels, but this is an addiction. So this is like a heroin addict finally starting to wean themselves off of heroin, and they still need it, but they don't have to have it twice a day, and then all of a sudden super heroin comes out with sprinkles. That's what WoW Classic was. They gave you a brand new injection of that original thing that you got addicted to, and now you good for another 40 years. You're gonna play WoW until you die, because now they can recycle those 17 years again. It's like it's like so brilliant that it feels disgusting, It's just like, we have you now. You ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere.
The current staff of Activision Blizzard today, working on World of Warcraft right now, are not the original Blizzard staff of 2004. The team that made World of Warcraft originally are long gone. They've been replaced with cash shop mounts, account boosts, and lackluster expansion packs. World of Warcraft's subscriber base has been dropping at a consistent rate. It's actually dropped 41% since the latest expansion pack, Shadowlands, launched.
And those players came back.
Players return for the launch of a new expansion, play through it, and then leave.
And then the cycle repeats.
Why don't they stick around? It's because they're caught in the abusive gaming cycle of hoping it will be as good as it used to be, hoping it will be the experience they remember, and then realizing it just isn't. No single game has done more damage to World of Warcraft than World of Warcraft.
RuneScape.
And just like every bad relationship, every awful job, every toxic friendship, we are starting to reach the breaking point, and even the strongly addicted enfranchised players are starting to leave.
But they come back. That's the part. I mean, it's not a big deal to leave an MMO and take a break until the next expansion. We do it all the time in Final Fantasy. It's not. I'll be impressed if they don't come back.
Asmongold, the world's largest World of Warcraft streamer, started playing Final Fantasy XIV, and it was his most viewed stream in months. Jesse Cox put out the video 15 years of WoW versus 1 year of FF14, and WoW refugees flocked to it. There was even a game report recently saying the daily active player count for FF14 was closing the gap on World of Warcraft and was poised to overtake it.
And the takeaway from that is that Final Fantasy XIV is growing. That has been verified many times over. And I think that's what this whole mania, that's why I'm genuinely excited, because when you log into Final Fantasy XIV, you will see expansion launch player numbers everywhere. It has never been like this. You can tell on any server you go to, it's just like, there are people everywhere. Sprouts everywhere. It's unprecedented. It's like Shadowbringers launch. It's like Stormbringers launch every single day.
Very soon. Ultimately, World of Warcraft hasn't been taken down by another game releasing and being better than it. World of Warcraft has been damaged, harmed, and is starting to be taken down by World of Warcraft no longer being as good as World of Warcraft once was. If you want to imagine this situation,
that hurt my brain a little bit.
The emotional bonds without the sunk cost fallacy.
Okay. Chat, y'all, you guys are bad influence, because now I'm waiting for him to take a drink. I'm waiting for this guy to take a drink, man. He's not only has a mug, he's just holding it.
Without any pre-established connections. Imagine this.
I bet it's empty.
World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV both didn't exist. You have no history with them. No one does. No one's heard of them before. And then imagine they both release, as they are right now, today. They both hit the MMORPG scene at the same time, with the graphics they've got now, and all the content they've got now, and all the leveling they've got now. Everything as it is right now. In that case...
It's kind of an impossible scenario, but okay.
Do you think World of Warcraft would do better than Final Fantasy XIV?
Because Final Fantasy is doing well because of WoW. A lot of Final Fantasy systems came from WoW. So this is kind of a broken argument.
No sunk cost fallacy and no emotional connection to either of the games. Which of them do you think would do better if they both released on the same day? Personally, I think more people would choose Final Fantasy XIV.
This is an impossible scenario.
I think right now we are seeing the result of Activision Blizzard consistently failing the player base. We are seeing the result of years and years of underwhelming updates. Expensive, unfulfilling expansions that remove more content than they add and contribute to parasitic gameplay design, including limited time systems and dropped mechanics every year.
Well, again, man, this goes back to my earlier point. WoW players that I've heard, I'm not gonna say talk to because I haven't talked to these people ever, but they care about endgame, man. They rush to max level to get the endgame. And from what I've been seeing, the endgame in WoW hasn't been underwhelming. Like, the Mythic Plus stuff has been good, from what people are saying. The complaints I've been hearing are the systems, all these different systems and stuff. You know, the new Mega Dungeon that came out, people are saying good things about it. So that the stuff that people ask for has been good, right? It's like their priorities are on those systems. But my problem, and I think a lot of other people's problems, is that doesn't make an MMO. And you got nobody to blame but yourself. All these people clamoring for that, you got nobody to blame for, because you can only do that content for so long. The MMO grind is a process, and the art form was perfected by EverQuest. You know, they took what Ultima Online had and they perfected it. And then WoW saw that and like, oh, we can make it even better. I honestly don't think they ever did, but they made a valiant effort and they brought in a whole new type of player. It's actually one of the things that bothers me about just why WoW is number one. Because if you look at WoW from a total MMORPG perspective, in the classic pillars, crafting, housing, exploration, social aspects, PvP, world PvP, dungeons, raids. If you look at those pillars, WoW is very weak in a majority of those pillars. Very, very weak. It can't hold a candle to a majority of MMOs out there. Story. I didn't even say story. It can't hold a candle to hardly anybody out there. What it does very well is endgame. In the form of, not these other areas, but the endgame is raids, dungeons, and PvP. And this crowd has been conditioned to think that that's all that matters. Which is why all WoW has to do is keep doing what they're doing. And ain't nobody going nowhere. Meanwhile, people in Final Fantasy are like, hey, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. And the WoW players are like, well, how many raids do you have? How many dungeons do you have? You know, what's equivalent to Mythic Plus? Oh, you only got one boss, we got 10. You know, it's just like they care about that and that only. And because of that, they'll leave because, you know, they'll tear through the content in a week or two, maybe a month. But guess what? A new raid comes out, cha-ching, swipe card, I'm coming back.
Sometimes with substantial class changes that miss the mark and upset the player base. We are seeing the beginnings of an exodus within the World of Warcraft player base to any other game. And it just so happens Final Fantasy XIV, with its massive free trial, is welcoming the disenfranchised WoW players and picking up the pieces.
And that's not going to last. I think Yoshi P knows it. I think Square Enix knows it. It's a surge that's not going to last. But what it's going to do is it's going to swell that number of Endwalker pre-orders higher than what it was going to be before. Which is why the Square Enix CEO, you know, shows up at the live letters smiling because Yoshi P just made him another $2 billion, whether it be stocks or whatever, because they're gonna exceed their numbers. They're gonna greatly exceed their numbers because that swell that we got now is going to increase the Endwalker pre-order numbers, which is all they care about. That's all they care. They want that dollar. Listen, they're software developers. They care about the money. They're passionate about their product. They're passionate about their craft. But when it's all said and done, that bottom line matters.
Final Fantasy XIV did not kill World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy XIV has been focused on being the best MMORPG it can be over several years. World of Warcraft killed World of Warcraft through years of bad updates.
I got it. The coffee cup got me.
Focused on WoW players and picking up the pieces. Final Fantasy XIV did not kill World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy XIV has been focused on being the best MMORPG it can be over several years.
Debatable.
World of Warcraft killed World of Warcraft through years of bad updates, not listening to the community, and simply not being as good as it could be.
He said World of Warcraft killed World of Warcraft like it's dead already, but he has a video where he said it's impossible to... He's confusing me a little bit.
But this shouldn't really come as a shock to Blizzard, because as they taught us themselves many years ago, no king rules forever.
Well,
thank you for watching. Another massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon.
Well, chat, you know, like I said, man, it's a matter of perspective. You got to understand this. No matter what side you take on this, you got to understand this. WoW is massive. That's not publicly quantified. It's a huge entity that's not publicly quantified, and we'll never know. We'll actually never know how big it is. But we do know that it's ginormous, right? It's like a Star Destroyer landing at an airport, and you're sitting in the terminal wondering how big it is. But you can just see like one segment of it. We're never going to know how big it is. But we do know that it's massive. And for something that massive to kill itself is going to take a perfect storm of millions of things, including no power. Like the servers can't be up. So what's got to happen is that somebody's got to successfully DDoS World of Warcraft and then EMP their entire backups. And all of a sudden, there's no more World of Warcraft. Then WoW might be dead because they'll probably work on a sequel and people will wait for that and come back to that. But make no mistake, man, Final Fantasy XIV is doing very well. That's not debatable. It's been quantified. It's been confirmed. We see it in game. I'm not just talking about streamers. I'm talking about when you actually log in, you see the huge surge of new players, of which some may be trial players, some may not be. And it's only happened in the last couple of months. This is not something that, was the case, a few months ago. It was before Asmon joined the server. It was before a lot of WoW streamers joined the server. That we saw this growth. We saw this growth before they came. It became on these guys' radar because of the growth. Asmon and all these it jumped on the radar because it was getting popular, and it had nothing to do with them. It's the power of word of mouth. When you have a gamer friend that says this game is good, you're going to consider their word 20 times more than if you see an ad on TV or on your browser. Because you trust their word. They're gamers. You've been playing with them. If they say the game is good, you're willing to at least download the trial, which is what's happening. And people are downloading the trial, and they're finding that the quests aren't that bad. They're finding that the global cooldown isn't that bad as people think. They're finding that the game actually has a lot to do outside the story. And these players are buying the complete edition. These players are pre-ordering Endwalker. It's a success story for Square Enix. It's not a death knell for World of Warcraft. Period. That's what's happening here. The issue is that there's an exodus happening because of the success of Final Fantasy XIV. People are leaving WoW and coming and trying Final Fantasy XIV. I'm not saying that's not happening. But I strongly believe that it's temporary for a lot of these folks. They're going to come back because of all the reasons we talked about earlier. They're going to come back no matter what. And what WoW needs to make itself better is more competition. So we need ESO to grow again, too. We need Guild Wars 2 to come out of ashes and actually do something. We need Ashes of Creation to actually be a great game. We need Crowfall to be a great game. Even though they're niche, there needs to be competition. Because Blizzard is not going to budge if nothing changes. If they don't have competition, they don't have to change anything. Because what's going to happen is that people are going to try the game and they're going to come back. So how do we prevent people from coming back to WoW? The only thing I can think of, maybe you guys can let me know, but the only thing I can think of is turn off the servers because people are going to come back. Especially now that you got WoW Classic. Now, before they did Classic, people were going to private servers to get that nostalgic feel back. Blizzard was very smart. And they embraced that idea, and now they're set for another, I don't know how many years because of WoW Classic, because they can remix that old content over and over again, and players are going to keep coming back. So I think this is why a lot of people think that the MMO space is dead, because there's a lot of rehash and rework and a lot of just nostalgia-driven stuff. Like, let's look at Ashes of Creation. It's a nostalgia-driven MMO. A lot of features are things that were in older games. Crowfall is basically Shadowbane. Reinvented, right? It's just like all these things, man. People are just trying to relive what was happening in the past again. And that stifles innovation. The paid subscription model is in jeopardy because of that. Because there's only a handful of MMOs out that have a paid subscription model, which I prefer. I really prefer the paid subscription model. I don't like the free to play or buy to play model. I prefer paid subscriptions because you generate tiers of players. If you don't have a paid subscription. Like, look at Crowfall that just came out. They got a VIP system. Very similar to ESO's VIP system. So there's not an equal ground in a PvP MMO. They're going to have a slight advantage. I don't know how big it is, but they're going to have a slight advantage. When you have a paid subscription model, that doesn't exist. You just pay to look better. Or you skip and you suck. You boost to 80 and you suck. So yeah, keep giving the money because you're going to suck. We really need to praise Final Fantasy and stop talking about WoW being bad. The reason why I wanted to, like, recently I've been getting into the WoW news is because I just had no idea that all this stuff was happening. The significance and the severity of it is meaningless to me. I just didn't know all this stuff was happening because I don't keep up on WoW news, right? And I go to various sources. I just don't go to the negative people. I go to the positive people too. And it's just surprising that people have been putting up with this from a Final Fantasy XIV player's perspective. Because in all honesty, from our perspective, we got it pretty good. We do. Final Fantasy XIV players got it pretty good compared to what other MMO players are going through in their game. Even with the pandemic, we got it good. But either way, I'm proud of Final Fantasy. I think WoW needs to tighten up. Don't get me wrong. I don't think WoW's innocent. They need to tighten up, and they need to do it quickly because it's kind of sad to see it happen. I don't like to see people who love WoW go through the pain and gnashing of teeth that they're going through. Right. It's at a heightened level now. It's not normal. It's not normal. It's bleeding over into all kinds of games. It's not normal. The amount of suffering people are going through because it's a long-term buildup and people are exploding. Some people just can't take it anymore. They're exploding. They're going to go back. Don't get me wrong. but it's just sad to see. And you want them to like Final Fantasy, but if they don't, you can't make them like it. You can't make them like it. So this was an interesting video, brought up some good topics, but all in all, I just don't think anything can kill WoW right now. Not even WoW.